Hey, good morning from the Front Porch, and I'll tell you what, man, we got some high energy today. We've got Nick Paré. Hey, Nick, how you doing today?
Good. How about yourself?
All right. Hey, Nick Paré is an awesome guitar player. He plays with Everrise and any other bands?
Not currently at the moment. I'm playing
Just
with
Everrise.
and doing a lot of writing for myself and
Sweet.
getting all that stuff squared away.
Well, man, I'm so thrilled to have you on the Front Porch this morning, so welcome, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. So, I've seen Nick perform in Everrise, and man, I'll tell you what, it's just really cool to see a younger guy up there jamming with us old codgers, man.
Well, you learn a lot from the older guys.
That's right, man.
Yeah.
That's right. You know, we have some good stories too, you know.
Yep. Yeah, I've heard a lot of them.
So are you from here, Nick?
I am born outside of Liberty Town in that area.
Oh,
So
nice.
I've been there forever. 20
Nice. Out in the sticks, huh?
years. Yeah, pretty much. Closer to Union Bridge, but
Cool. So what inspired you to play the guitar? And I think I know the answer to this, but a lot of people out there probably don't.
what would be your guess?
I think it would probably be the old man, the father figure in the house.
It has something to do with it.
Just a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think that when you boil everything down, yeah, I mean, just seeing that from such a young age, that certainly impacted where I was going in terms of like, was I going to play sports? Because I'm a decent height, but I can't play basketball,
Right.
and I'm not the most athletic person. So I think music from a young age was where I was going to end up.
Right. Well, a lot of us that start playing music, it's usually one of our parents that inspires us, especially if they play a musical instrument.
Yeah.
And, I know your dad's an accomplished guitarist, and I know that seed was probably planted at a young age. And, sometimes guys don't want to do what their dad does,
Yeah, and there was a little bit of that too, but that came later where, just because he plays guitar doesn't mean I have to play guitar. And he never forced it on me, which was good.
Right.
So he kind of let me gravitate towards it myself.
That's cool.
And then when I was 10 or 11, then he set me up with lessons with Gary at making music.
Gary.
Yeah. So it's full circle.
Oh, that's cool. So Gary was your teacher.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, Gary works at Making Music. He's one of the guys that work there. There's a really good lessons program there where you can learn music, play musical instruments.
With me and Gary, and I know John Sines is teaching drums.
Right.
Gary does bass and all that stuff too. But
Oh, that's really cool. Hey, maybe I should study under Gary a little bit, see if he can teach me anything new.
he can teach you anything.
Cool. So I know, when we play a musical instrument when we're young, the first thing we want to do is get out there and try our chops in public. Do you remember the name of your first band?
Yes, I do. They were called Nemesis. It was at the Frederick Rock School.
Nemesis.
I was 14.
Sweet.
Yeah, we were in between like 90s and 80s hard rock. So there was different influences from the kids that were in the band.
Right.
Mine was obviously the 80s hard rock influence because at the time that's all I had known.
Right.
So that stuff was cool. Iron Maiden,
Oh,
Sabbath,
wow.
stuff like that.
That's pretty cool, man.
It was fun. It's hard to do when you're 14. But
School of Rock, man. I noticed sometimes with the School of Rock, you get some older guys in there as well. They'll mix them with the younger guys in those bands.
we used to call them the adult bands.
The adult bands.
They were the professionals.
The pros, huh?
Yes.
Well, they're probably at the same level as you were, so I don't know if they were pretty much professional or not, but
When you're 14, you don't know.
shoot, I can't even remember back when I was 14. But I do know one thing. When I was 14, I was playing music. Man,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that was a big influence in my life as well.
Yeah, going to the rock school was by far the best thing for me in terms of development as a musician.
Right.
Because taking private lessons at the store, that got me to where I could. It pretty much capped me out there, and you can't learn how to play live without doing it. I mean, it's the only way to do it is to get experience. So I'm pretty lucky that Scott has a great facility there. and it's right across the street from my dad's office. So he'd drop me off, go to work,
That's cool.
come back, pick me up.
Sweet. Well, one thing you were talking about playing live, I've been playing live a lot. And, every single time I get up on that stage, I feel as if it's new to me.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time. You get the butterflies, you're thinking, oh, man, what's going to happen in this performance, and you have that uncertainty of the crowd and everything else. So I think as much experience as I've ever had playing live, every single time I get up on that stage, it's almost like a new show, a new experience. I don't know if it feels that way for you sometimes, where you get up on stage and you're like not quite sure what to expect,
It's not so much nerves for the performance. It's more so nerves for what could go wrong technically.
Right,
because
yeah.
when with Everrise, in a lot of situations we have our own backline obviously, but then the PA system and the mixer, so it's like everything's ours. So what could go wrong? Because there's always one problem.
Right.
But you just don't know when it's going to happen or what it's going to be. So you got to be quick to think. And so learning that system is important.
Right. Sound reinforcement has always been a problem, for me in some of the bands, because one, I don't really understand it that well. And, if you don't have a really good sound guy, that could turn out to be a real quick nightmare.
Yep, but we've been lucky enough to work with Chad Evans for most gigs.
I love that guy, man.
Yeah, he's a really great guy.
He's up BRSA, right? Does the sound at BRSA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get booked there for once a month, typically.
Right.
I know that we have this month off, but I wouldn't say once a month, but we're up there quite frequently. And it's a great gig because everything's done. I set my amps up and then I'm done.
That's cool, man. I like gigs like that.
And we've also been lucky enough to work with Joe Corcoran, and he's a fantastic guy too.
Right. So this first band, Nemesis, did you guys ever get out and just kind of do anything on your own, or was that just more of a School of Rock thing?
Strictly School of Rock. When you're 14 years old, I didn't care. I was just happy to be playing the old champions.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was a great venue.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see they're trying to do something to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Nemesis band, how long were you doing that?
Probably a year. And then everybody split up and did their own bands there. So I was there until I was probably 16 or 17.
Right.
And those were like 2 or 3 years that I wouldn't change anything about.
Right.
I mean, there was obviously got ups and downs, but...
Did you get into any other projects once you left the School of Rock?
Yeah. So I put together kind of for a one-off, but it ended up being like the best thing ever. When I recorded my first album, Memory, that was me. It was a big collaborative effort. So it was me, Dad, because I didn't know what I was doing with recording. So he
And
was
for those of
helping me
you
out
who
with
don't know who Dad is, it's Bob Perry.
that. Yes,
And currently playing for Kicks, right?
that's correct.
Sweet.
So he helped me out, and then I had Alec Barnhart play drums, who's the son of Jeff Barnhart, the bass player.
Nice. Yeah.
And Kyle sang, and so did a guy named Sean Frazier.
Right. Kyle Stuhler, right?
Yeah.
Kyle Stuhler's actually the front man for Everrise, and then he's got a couple of projects on his own as well.
Yep. I think he just played with Crush Theory at the with Jeff at the Rock Me Don't Shake Me benefit.
Right. That's right. I saw him on the bill. So that album project, what kind of music was it?
Well, I went into it with no premonition of what it was going to end up being, but it turned out to be a hard rock album. We included some songs that Dad and Sean had started to work on back in the late 80s, early 90s. There's 2 songs on that record that I heard on a cassette tape.
Right.
When my dad was explaining to me what cassette tapes were, and I was going through the old box and just shoving stuff in the player, and I said, "Who's this?" Because it had demo written on it, and he goes, "Well, that was something that me and Sean had worked on a long time ago." I said, "Well, this is some pretty good stuff." So we completed it, restructured it a little bit, and
That's pretty cool.
Those are some of the best songs on the album. I didn't even write them.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. You know, that you found some old historical archive of the old man's and said, "Hey, let's revive this, man. Let's bring it back to life."
Yep.
You know?
The only thing I didn't let him do was play his old solos. I said, "You got to play new solos."
Right.
Because back in the day, similar to me, when he was younger, everything was Yngwie-ish, fast stuff.
Right.
And I was like, that's not how we are anymore.
Right.
Let's play something. Let's slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, that was the like the hair metal from the '80s. You know, the guitar player would get up there and they'd play everything crazy and lay it down. And
Used to be me.
yeah,
I still got a little speed left in me, but I've mellowed out in my old age.
okay. Yeah, this dude's old, right? Yeah. Well, you know, it'll come back though. I'm telling you what. It's funny because as musicians, you know, we go through that, you know, where we want to kind of experiment with things and say, hey man, you know, let me slow it down and kind of mellow it out, get into a chill mode. And as you get older and you start to say, well, man, I wonder if I still got it, man. Let's see if I can get back into that.
I did that 2 nights ago. So one of the biggest influences to me of all time, Dave Mustaine and Marty Friedman, specifically that combo of Megadeth.
Right.
So when you look at that lineup of Megadeth, to me that's like the epitome of what music was. If you asked me any time between ages 15 and 18,
Right.
I was like, this is all there is.
Right. Plus,
This
they
is
had
the
that
coolest
distinctive.
stuff.
They had that distinctive sound and style when they did that stuff too. You know, that's what made them so unique and stand out from the other. You know, the fast moving, like
Yeah.
that hard, heavy metal music. You know.
Yeah, especially when you get into some of the thrash stuff, which was early Megadeth, but when Marty joined it found this melodic center
Right.
that I was all in on it. And so, speaking of 2 nights ago, that's exactly what I did. I've been
Sweet.
playing too much Beatles, too much Oasis.
Oasis, yeah. I remember Oasis, band. That was a chill band too, man.
I love them.
Yeah.
They're like number one for me right now. Which, some people hate them. That's fine.
Yeah.
They are for me.
I think it's a distinctive taste, you know, the old '90s grunge rock, you know, the chill
They're-
Oasis, you know, Soundgarden, those kind of guys.
The
You know?
British pop era of the 90s has suddenly turned me into a non-metalhead, which I'm still a metalhead, don't get me wrong.
Right.
Yeah, so going back and playing the Megadeth songs and just trying to iron those out after not playing them for so long,
Right.
you do realize what playing Don't Look Back in Anger and, you know, songs from that era, you realize that doesn't exactly work for, you know, picking 64th notes with your right hand.
Right.
But I got through it.
Sweet. Well, it's good that you readdress that stuff.
Yeah.
And I know you're a highly skilled guitarist, and you know, tell me about that journey on how you're going from point A to point B, and what kind of goals you have, you know, as far as getting better, not just technically, but you know, all round, you know. I know we're always searching for the holy grail of tone and things like that, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're going through this journey, what are some of the goals that you're looking at right now that you're really trying to get to?
Well, I don't know. I'm just gonna kind of let it happen, because everything for me to this point has been not scripted at all. It's just happened. So I happened to go into making music.
Right.
I happened to take lessons. I happened to cap out there because I liked it and I practiced.
Right.
Then I went to the rock school. When I went to the rock school, that made me grow into a position where by the time I left there, I could write, I could perform,
Right.
I could play just about anything at that point in time.
Right.
But after that, I stopped playing.
Right.
So I stopped playing for about a year.
Right.
Taking that break was also one of those things that just kind of happened because I had burnt out from it. I was playing so much.
Right.
And it became unfun. And part of my reasoning behind that was, why? Why am I doing it? Because it seemed like it wasn't going to go anywhere. Because it is daunting.
Right.
And it's still daunting. And I
Right.
know that, you know,
It is.
here. But I also know that one of the only things I'm good at is playing guitar.
Right.
So I'm probably going to have to do something with that at some point. So, I mean, anything work related, music related, I'm all for, and I just let it happen. So I worked on a documentary soundtrack in 2021, and that was one of the most fun things I've ever done, and I barely played a guitar. Right. But writing stuff like that for work and, you know, to help people, that was something that I enjoyed and got out of that. So more stuff like that, you know, if somebody wants to pick me up.
Yeah, that's cool. You know, getting into production work is pretty cool, you know. And, you know, a lot of guys that played, you know, I know Nikki Sixx, you know, with Motley Crue became a producer and was producing albums for other bands.
Yeah.
Because he had a good understanding of how to push, you know, a band beyond what they can see or what they have in their minds, you know. So being a producer, man, that's really a good I think move to work towards as well, you know, when we're especially when you're doing session work, production work, recording work, laying down tracks, things like that.
Just,
you know,
knowing how the whole cycle works.
Right.
Having done it, having worked with the producer, having worked with so many talented musicians in anything that I've ever done.
Right.
You know, nobody's ever been lousy. I've always usually been the weak link, which is a good thing because that makes me better.
Well, it gives you room to grow too, and you know, if you know what your weaknesses are, you can always focus on those and get better, you know. And I know one of the things that I'm still studying, I'm an old guy, is music theory. You know, the theory, it's kind of like mastering the martial arts, you know. You think you can get on top of music theory, but there's always just something else that's coming into play, and you're like, how did they do that? Why did they do that? You know?
Why does that work?
Why does that work, and why does that resonate with humans so much? You know? And I think that's something that just is a constant evolution, especially as music evolves and changes, and you know, we go through these ebbs and flows of styles, and you know, we hear this something, we're like, wait, I've never heard that before. Why is that working? How is that working? I want to really drill into that, you know.
And that's what I studied with a guy named Jamie, and so I wouldn't be where I'm at without Gary, but I do think that Jamie pushed me to be where I'm at now, because he knew, like, he kind of took on a producer's role, and pretty much from the first time I sat down with him around 14, 15, he was like, do you want to play guitar or do you want to play guitar?
Right.
And I was like, okay, I want to play guitar. And he was like, all right, well,
good,
we're going to work.
Good.
And you're going to have a lot of pain that's going to happen from this. And then I ended up playing so much that it ended up burning me out a little
bit. Yeah. Well, you know, it's good to have people challenge you, you know, and make you think in a different direction, especially when you're young, and you know, you need those kind of challenges to help you to grow and explore things that you wouldn't normally explore. So I think that was good, man.
Certainly, and the theory aspect of like the stuff that you're working on, that was stuff that I started to hit with him, and then it went from there. You know,
right.
Once you get it, and there's no other way to explain it.
Now
you
know,
either get it or you don't.
You know Steve Beck, right?
Yeah,
Steve Beck. So I play in a band with Steve Beck, and it's really funny because Steve Beck, you know, will watch me play a bass line, and he's like, "What are you doing?" You know, and then we get into this little discussion about music theory and why that's not working what I'm doing, and what we need to do to fix that. And I think that's freaking awesome, you know, that, you know, we can drill into that and have an understanding of why we need to do that, why what I was doing wasn't working. You know, when you're playing an F and he's playing a B, you know,
it's not going.
Yeah,
well, it can work, but you better be creative as to how you get there.
Yeah, we weren't being progressive. We were playing some good solid rock, and that F and B were like two cats stuck in a tree, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, it's great to have guys like that keep you challenged, you know. So I know you teach.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about that teaching experience, and you know, how, if somebody's interested out there, how they can get lessons from you at making music.
So, well, I'll answer the second part of that question first. Getting in touch with the store is the best way to do it.
Okay.
I don't know their phone number off the top of my head.
We'll put the link in the more tab at the bottom, and you can click on there and look up Nick on the Making Music site if you're interested. If you're in the Frederick area.
I'm on the website as a teacher, so I'm certified by whatever standards they have to be a teacher. And just ask for me, or just tell them that you're interested in guitar lessons. And if it doesn't work out with me and my schedule, like you said, Steve is there teaching, Gary's teaching. They got a kid named Logan there that's teaching. He's a cool kid. So yeah, it's starting to fill back up a little bit.
Good.
Yeah.
So your teaching journey, I know teaching others can be a little, I don't know, I don't think I would feel comfortable teaching others because I might teach them wrong or something like that. I know we have these ideas that go through our head, we're wanting to teach somebody. It takes a special person to want to step up and pass along the knowledge. What kind of process did you go through, when you decided that you wanted to teach?
Well, I had worked at a restaurant, and that had ran its shelf life, so I was done with that.
Right.
And it was after I had gotten asked to play in Everrise. Then I started playing again, and I needed a job.
Right.
So I went to Music and Arts, which is Guitar Center 2.0.
Right.
They gave me the corporate look of like, yeah, okay, kid, we'll see you. We'll call you back. That's what the guy said.
Right.
Okay. And then I went to Making Music, and you walk in there, and it's a different vibe. You get Pam sitting there.
Right.
And then there was another guy that was sitting there that was a lot younger, and I had no clue who he was, and I just talked to him for a little bit. It was Ryan.
Ryan, I love that guy.
The son of the owners, and he's also my boss. So it worked out because they'd known me for a while, and they'd known my credibility. And I initially started just working in the store, and I think they just wanted to make sure that it would work out. And I think I know enough to get by with selling things that I don't know anything about. And I now have learned, and they taught me a bunch of stuff. Like
that's cool. They're great people. I love the whole crew over at Making Music.
Fantastic, and it's you can really see that them being good people is what has made them stick around.
Right.
Because people will always go back to them because they know that.
You're right about that store. It really has a really sweet vibe. I go there once a week to study drum under Johnny Signs, and man, I'll tell you, it's a great vibe there. It's almost like a family type of atmosphere. Plus, they have so many freaking guitars, man. It is almost like a kind of a narrowed down version of going into Guitar Center. You got a lot of guitars, but there's a personal touch there, and I really like that. Plus, they have guys setting them up there and everything else, right out in the open, which is really cool. I love that.
That's what they're going for, I'm sure.
Right, I'm sure.
I'm just there to.
So your teaching journey, I mean, so when you got there, I think that they probably just asked you, hey, want to try to teach? Or
I asked them.
Oh, you asked.
Because I was like, I want to do this. I really want to do this.
Cool.
And so I started with one student, and she was fantastic. And it was like, because I was nervous.
Right.
It was kind of like the first performance thing again. Like, I didn't know if I could teach somebody. I'd never taught anybody.
Right.
And all I heard from like my dad was, I'm not going to teach you because I can't teach you. So it's like, well, he's a great player, but he might not be a good teacher.
Right.
And he is a good teacher. He's given lessons before, but it's because it's me.
Right.
So that conflict
different
there,
dynamic, man.
Yeah, definitely. But she was fantastic, and from that point I was hooked on it, and I was like, I want as many of these as you can give me. Give me work.
That's good. So once you got a taste of it, then you wanted to thrive, and that's awesome. And I think guys that teach, especially music or art or anything that's part of the creative process, and passing along that knowledge, that's just freaking awesome. I love the fact that you can pass along what you've learned to others, and maybe see them ramp up and become maybe, something even better than what we are,
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, there's always bigger fish.
Right.
And if I can help somebody get to beyond where I'm at,
right,
then I would be just as happy as
right. I've actually seen that. You know, I've taught people art theory and color theory in the artwork I've done, and watched them to go on to be incredible artists. You know, and just because I taught them a little about color theory or a little bit about composition, you know, something you could probably Google or look up. You know,
well, it's no different than music. I mean, there's every song ever made on YouTube.
But I think when it comes from another human being and you have that connection with them, and they can actually give you a hands-on and say, "Look, watch when I do this." You know,
you need that.
Yeah, or here, let me show you how to put your hand on the neck. You know, so you don't get any bad habits.
Yeah.
You know, that's more important, I think, with that human interaction than if you looked at 1,000 YouTube videos. You know, you're not going to get that dynamic of being able to interact with another person, you know, and them to really break down what it is you're doing and show you, hey, you may not want to do that because you'll get into a bad habit, and then it could cause health problems with your hands, or you know, or you're not
it's just not effective to play that way.
It's not optimal. It'll slow you down or whatever, you know. So that's really good to get into that. So the next thing I want to talk about is you've got an original single coming out the end of this month.
I do, June 30th.
That's pretty exciting stuff. So what can you tell me about this?
What can I tell you? So it's a long story, but to just simplify at least the beginning of it, which is the crazy part. I go to McDaniel College, and there was a girl that was in one of my business classes that didn't look like a business type student.
Right.
She would always wear like Motley Crue shirts. I think Skid Row.
I can see this girl already in my head.
Well, yeah, and apparently I'd been in classes with her for a while, and I didn't talk to her, didn't know who she was.
Right.
We ended up, actually, I think we were doing a project, and it had something to do with, like, carrying quarters and throwing a paper, stuff that, you know, we pay a lot of money to go to college for. Throwing quarters and some paper airplanes.
Right, yeah, that's where all that tuition money goes, right?
Yeah. And I noticed she had on a Kick shirt, and so I said, you know, hey, do you like them? And I had no intention of saying, like, well, my dad plays for them.
Right.
And she goes, yeah, I like that kind of music. And I was like, oh, that's cool, me too. And I told her I played, and just that's how we met. That was the initial conversation.
Right.
From there, you know, just friends with her in class.
Right.
Didn't really talk to her much outside of that. Then started talking to her a little bit more and talking about music, because that was the commonality there.
Right.
Found out that she can write a little bit.
Right.
You know, she didn't know she could. She didn't know how to formulate it or anything like that. But that's where I came in. So her and I together have this notes app in our phones called Lyric Thoughts.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, well, sometimes there's cool ideas, and sometimes there's ideas where I go, how is that going to fit into a lyric? Because the word has 8 syllables in it,
right,
you know.
Right.
And so it's a lot of fun. We put that one together pretty quickly, and the process was surprisingly simple. I'm somebody that likes to collaborate,
right?
Because I don't know if I want to do it all by myself. I think, you know, when you have somebody else's experience involved with it, you can get something out of it that I wouldn't have even gone close to.
Right.
So lyrically, it's her concepts. I had a little bit of help with writing lyrics, but it is a good song. We recorded it at my house. We wrote it. I wrote the music at my house once I kind of had an outline of what she had.
Right.
And I asked her, I said, well, how come you don't, like, write music? Because she plays guitar and she plays piano.
Right.
And she was like, whatever. So it's just for fun.
Right.
And that's where I'm at too, you know. It's just for fun.
Probably her journey is probably similar to yours, you know, where it just has to be serendipitous. You know, it's got to be those happy accidents or these happy you stumble onto something and said, hey, we could probably make something out of this.
That's literally pretty much from the moment I met her. That was how that went. It was just happy accidents.
Right.
Depending on who you ask.
Well, I think a lot of artists, when they're writing, probably have a similar process. They're writing, of course, life experience. Anything that's based on a life experience, or they saw something weird and said, hey, I gotta write a song about this, or just going through a terrible time in their life or a super happy time in their life, that inspires them to write music. But I think for the most part, you just stumble onto something and you're like, hey, this could really become something.
Yeah, and part of what I should also say, her name's Jackie Henley. Totally forgot to say her name at the beginning, but that's fine. Part of what attracted me to what she had written was that she had clearly written it as her experience, but it was generalized enough that I could relate to it.
Right.
So, and it was good. It wasn't like just your generic pop stuff where the sky is blue, stuff like that.
Right.
But you can utilize the generic pop thing in an interesting way, which is something that she did.
Right.
And I would rewrite a line or two here and there just to kind of make it work. But.
I think some of the most successful songs that I've heard are songs that resonate with an entire group of people. That somebody experienced in their life, but that whole generation or that whole group of people, even as a country, there's some songs, Still Rockin' America, it resonates with a whole country, I think that's what makes a song successful, is the fact that you can take a life experience and it's so relatable to so many people that it's just going to become a very popular song.
And it needs one thing that I didn't really do a good job of explaining to her, but I think she gets it. Once you put a song out, it's not yours anymore.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
And you're never done with the song. A song's never done.
Right.
You just abandon it.
Right.
And so we've abandoned this one. But it's time.
Right.
I think we got everything out of it that we can get. And I asked her, I said, we don't have to put this out.
Right.
But she said she wanted to, and so here
So
we are.
what platform are you guys going to release this on?
It's going to be on everything, streaming, digital, whatever. We don't have hard copies because obviously
Like
we're not
SoundCloud, Spotify.
It'll be Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio. It's going to be on radio stations in the Frederick area. So anything digital.
And what's the release date of this song?
June 30th.
June 30th. All right. So June 30th, next song's going to be out there.
Yeah, so it's available for pre-order now on iTunes, and you can pre-save it on Spotify. So anything pre-order in whatever streaming service you use.
All right,
there.
so we'll put that link down here in the video where you can pre-order this song, and we'll try to get that out as much as we can, before the thing comes out. But I'm excited to hear it.
It's certainly really not. Cool. It's certainly not Megadeth.
Well, it sounds more like it's something that a lot of people can relate to, and is it like a kind of a rock style or?
So my big influence right now is Noel Gallagher of Oasis.
Right.
That's where I'm at. Sorry to everybody that doesn't like Oasis.
Or
doesn't like me, but Oasis is where I'm at, and Taylor Swift is her icon.
Right.
So if you look at, like, for me, I'm like Oasis, Noel Gallagher, the Beatles. Her Beatles is Taylor Swift, which is interesting because she does come from the 80s rock background.
Right.
But when you get outside of that, she's going down so many different rabbit holes of, like, country music, hard country music. There's some guy named Hardy that she made me check out, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
Right.
But Taylor Swift is where she's always at, and she knows every lyric to every deep cut ever.
Wow, that's really cool.
So that's where that influence came in, and writing it in the style of that Britpop era.
Right.
I think that the two worked well together. And she's also easy to get along with.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah.
That really is important.
Don't get me wrong, we butt heads, but...
Well, you have to. It's part of the creative process, you know?
Yeah. It was more so on my end than hers, because it's her song, so I'm going to let her do what she wants with it.
Right.
But every once in a while I would say, let's try to do this again.
Right.
Let's try to do that a different way. But it worked out.
Yeah, well, sometimes you got to push it, you know, just to get the best out of it, you know, as long as it's not pushed too much, you know.
No.
Because, you know, I have a really bad habit of overworking things sometimes, especially if I'm doing something creative, is I always try to second guess myself. And I think that's where another person coming into the project or a collaborative effort is of value, you know, is because they can keep you focused on the end game and not so much just reworking something that you're hung up on, you know. And it could be something simple as just a phrase or a riff, you know.
Yeah.
And you're stuck on it, and you're like, man, how can I make this better, you know? But it's already good, you know. It's already working. It's already, you know, relatable, you know.
And to that point, when we were writing it, once I had the music down, I had to show it to her and show her the melody. So after class one day, we went back to her place and played the song and just kind of worked it out. And because she's never done any of that before, it was kind of like my making music teaching experience was affecting myself there, because I was like, she doesn't know what she's doing, so I have to kind of start from ground zero.
Right.
We'll work her way up. She got the melody down, she sang it fine, and was playing it at the same time so she could practice it on her own. But yeah,
are you doing any vocal work on there?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
The last thing anybody wants to do is hear me sing.
Well, I know you do backup vocals for Everrise, and you know that's cool. But I thought maybe you're maybe delving into that a little bit.
Maybe at some point, but no.
Okay, well that's
not on
cool.
this one.
That's cool. I'm the same way, you know. I'll sing backups. They got me singing some fronts, and it's okay, I guess. But it's not really where I want to be.
Yeah, no.
You know.
I mean, you can get by with backups. Anybody can do backups.
Right.
I'm definitely not a lead singer.
So, we talked about some of your influences like Oasis and Megadeth. Are there any others that you know that influenced, you know, the direction you want to take your music?
Yeah. When I was younger, it was John Sykes, Marty Friedman, in that 14 to 17 age range, because that's like, those were my two guys.
Right.
As I got older, it became like what we've already talked about, mixed in with, now I'm starting to discover Ghost, particularly Ghost. Rush has always been a big influence for me.
Right.
So Alex Lifeson.
Right.
Just because of a lot of his chord voicings and the way he plays and the way that he would write is so abstract. And I find the same thing with, even all the way back to the Beatles, John Lennon. If you look at John Lennon and ABBA, those two, you wouldn't think that they go together, but in a lot of ways they do.
Right.
And then if you relate ABBA to Ghost, because of the Swedish influence,
Right.
that's how those two connect. So that's like my whole wall of music influences are all tied together somehow. You just got to figure it out.
Right. Well, Europop's got its own flavor too. You know, the European rock, like ABBA. We had Aha in the '80s. You know, which was just, it had its own distinct flavor and style. You know, and then you start getting into some of the harder stuff. You know, coming out of Sweden and up there in Denmark and Northern Europe. You know, it does have its own distinguished flavor. You know, look at the Scorpions, you know, that German influence, you know.
Absolutely.
Just had its own flavor, and people were trying to figure out, why is this so distinctive? And, you know, it's because it's coming from a different part of the world than what we're used to, you know.
And what they have in Germany or Denmark, like you said, or Sweden, is so different than what we have here.
Right.
And you can see that. I mean, if you look up live performances of Ghost playing in Sweden,
Right.
They draw well here. They're doing festivals, stadiums, stuff
Right.
like that. But the atmosphere is different because I think they get it a little bit more than our culture does.
Right.
Because to them, that's like their Metallica.
Right.
That's
right.
like they made it out. They made it out of Sweden.
Yep.
Not that Sweden's a bad place. I don't know
Right.
anything
Right.
about Sweden.
Right.
But
It's much smaller than the United States, so you're going to get a bigger
that's true.
following here than you would get in Sweden, you know. So I think that's why the British influence was so big here. You know, the Brits all wanted to come here because there's many more people than there is in Great
opportunity.
Britain. And it's different, and we liked that because it's different. You know, it wasn't Elvis. It was the Beatles.
Yes.
Even though Elvis had a major influence on the Beatles.
And then they did it again in the 80s. And then you had Maiden. And Maiden for me they're always going to be an influence. So that was something that I grew up listening to.
Yeah, I love Iron Maiden. You know, Steve, gosh, I'm terrible with names.
Harris?
Steve Harris, man. That bass player, that style, you know, that thumping, that galloping style, man. I love it, you know, and I'm always down there trying to, I got to speed the galloping up. How do I do that, you know? And it's a matter of just optimization and keeping those fingers as close to the strings as possible, you know?
Yeah.
But he's so powerful on the strings. I mean, it's almost like he's slapping the bass, but he's literally hitting it with this, pounding it with his fingers, you know. It's just unbelievable. So that was a really big influence for me as well with Iron Maiden, you know.
If you want to talk about songwriters, that's your guy, Steve Harris. It's everything's based around the same E, C, D. Every once in a while you have a G.
Right. But it works.
So many hits.
But it works. I mean, it works. Even look at Judas Priest. Judas Priest, same way.
Yeah.
You know, they kept it on just a basic structure.
Especially the early stuff. Yeah.
And it's right in the pocket, and the lyrics are great, and it's almost anthem material, you know? Mm-hmm. And people are like, yeah, and it's just, you're really just rocking with it, you know, moving with it. So I can see how that happened, you know? So let's talk about weird moments on stage, man. I always ask guys when they come on the porch, let's talk about some weird things. We're performing. All of a sudden you get some weird, crazy thing. Anything you want to share?
Well, there's quite a few. Ones that aren't specific to me, but are things that have happened. I mean, we had a lady jump on stage at Blue Ridge one time. That was fun. Just because I didn't know who she was. Everybody else was aware that she does that sometimes, except for me. So when she jumped up there, like right near the in-ear rack, I was like, uh-oh, where's Greg to, security?
Right.
And I looked at him and he just kind of went like that. And so, he got a stern talking to, but then he told me that everything was okay. So I said, all right. So that had happened. I mean, anything. One time we were playing at Antietam, the last show we did.
Right.
And I wear my in-ear pack on my back, on my belt loop.
Right.
And Jimmy came up behind me because it's a relatively big stage, and I didn't know he was there. And he went to lean on me because it's like a little stage thing we do.
Right.
So he went to lean on me, and he hit my pack. And so my pack got turned all the way up to 10.
Oh, no.
And we had just started a song. And so the entire time my ears are ringing and bleeding.
Oh, no. That's terrible, man.
And of course, he didn't know he did it.
Right.
And I'm just trying to reach back there and get it. And it's like ear piercing. Because it's a lot of me in my mix.
Right.
And then a lot of Kyle. And I got Kyle hitting these really big notes, and I'm playing a lead over top of it. And I'm just like, this cannot sound like this out front.
Right. And if anybody knows Kyle, he projects when he sings, man. He's really belting it out there, and to have that really loud in your ears,
on
man.
10 with, some really nice earbuds. That was not fun. But as soon as that song was done, I think I took one out because I was like, I need to let it breathe.
I usually just wear one in it because I like to hear the backline sound, stage sound anyways. Being a bass player, it helps me to stay in the pocket if I can hear the actual live drums next to me versus hearing them in the in-ears. Because I know there's a little bit of a a little bit of a delay. It's not much. It's about a 1 or 2 millisecond delay. So I want to hear that live to keep it in the pocket for one, and two, I just love the sound of the back line, man. I just for some reason I just love feeling that air moving around, and it helps. But I'll tell you, I've experienced what you've experienced with the in-ears. And playing bass, you can't just stop.
Yeah, no.
You know,
I can stop.
You can
Everybody
stop.
else has to keep going.
If you're playing rhythm or if you're like in between leads, you can stop and reach back there. But when you're playing bass, it's a constant thing. And so I'm sitting there like trying to find an open note or an open string where I can just reach back there and I'm still plucking it and get it. And eventually I was able to. But man, I'll tell you, I did have like, tinnitus in my ear for a couple of days after that. It was pretty loud. So I know exactly what you're experiencing. And it's crazy, It's some of the other weird things that happen on stage. Anything else?
I mean, I've forgotten just about everything you can forget.
Right.
In terms of like showing up to a gig, I don't have a belt. One time I forgot pants. One time I wore pants to the venue.
I was gonna say,
I forgot
pants on?
I forgot my stage pants.
Stage pants, okay.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that gig if I didn't have pants. There's a lot of people that Facebook Live things, which is kind of annoying, but I have to have pants for that.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of pants, I talked to Dave DeMarco on the porch a few weeks back, and he said when he was younger, he was on stage and he had the Adidas pants that had little snaps on the sides, and the guitar player would reach over and grab them,
do his buttons,
and undo them, and by the time he was halfway through the song, his pants were down around his ankles. He couldn't do anything because he's playing the bass.
That was me the first time I played with Everrise. I was so concerned about making sure I had the in-ear rack set up the router, make sure the back line's good.
Right.
That I forgot a belt, and so I was going to take an instrument cable and tie it off because my pants were pretty big. Right. And they were falling down quite frequently. So that
and you're sitting there playing guitar.
Yeah, literally.
Pants.
And so my mom goes, "Are you not wearing a belt?" And I said, "No, I'm not wearing a belt." And that was, I think, I went through a phase where I would wear all black. I'd wear black jeans, black shirt, black vest, and a pink tie. And then I started to become the pink tie guy, and I was like, I don't know if I want to be that.
Yeah, you don't want to be a pink tie guy.
And I said, "No, I'm not wearing a belt." And she goes, "Well, I'm going to find you one." So some dude in the crowd let me wear his belt.
That's cool, man.
For the rest of the night.
That's cool,
Two more sets.
See, fans are great, man.
Fans are great. We have the best fans. Best fans.
Well, that's really cool.
And nothing specific to me or the band or anything, but just some of the stuff you see on stage that, once the crowd gets going, especially into the third set, if we start playing a song like "Still Loving You," which is more of a romantic, slow dancey song.
Yeah,
you get to see some people do some PDA going on, but it just makes me laugh. And I look at John, and John looks at me, and we were like, "Hey, you see that?" And it's like, you got two people getting it on in the back, but
right. Well, a lot of times. A little bit of alcohol has a lot of it.
And our crowd drinks, which is
influence,
which is the problem with that. Not that it's a problem, but they drink a lot for every bar that we go to, and they always show up and show out. So they're consistent.
Yeah, at least they're consistent, right? Well, that's cool. Well, it sounds like you've had some pretty fun experiences on the stage.
That's just the weird ones.
I know we have highs and lows on the stage. If you're feeling a little, melancholy or down, what do you do to give yourself energy to work yourself up? I know sometimes setting up the stage can be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
This past show we had, our sound guy didn't show up, so we had to do our own sound, and we were all stressed out, and it showed in our performance. And so when we have these lows, what do you do to try to work yourself out to get back in the zone?
Well, I'll give you an example. And it's mainly an example of growth. Because when I went, if this had happened when I was younger, I wouldn't have known how to react, and I probably would have reacted in the wrong way. But we opened for Kicks in March at the Fire Hall in Brunswick.
Right.
And that was a big show for us.
Mm-hmm.
for them too. But I play a blue custom Paré guitar that
Right.
has my last name on it. So that's
Beautiful.
my main guitar. But
Yep.
I play a red 335 custom shop that it's one of the best. It's the second best guitar I've ever played behind my blue one. And so those are my two holy grail instruments. And so I brought those two to the gig, and I didn't have a guitar tech because we usually have Greg, but at the bigger shows, Greg has other responsibilities.
Right.
And so it had nothing to do with setting up the stage or anything like that, but one of my oldest music friends, too, playing in open mics with him, he was there, and he asked me, he works for Showtime, and he said, do you need a tech? And I said, yeah, if you want to help out, I'd love it. And so we play a half step down, and it came time to change guitars, and he said, do you want me to tune this one while you're playing the other one? I said, yeah, sure. So he was going to tune it, and I'm not paying any attention to what he's doing, except I did notice that he had left. He went back into the dressing room, I guess because it's quieter, you could think, I don't know. Or it's because he was having some massive problems. Because when I got the guitar back, I had 3 D strings, and everything else was in standard. So I played an entire song with my D string and my G string, and everything else was out of tune. I had D, D, G, and then like A sharp was my E string, and I mean it was really bad. And so it was in a situation where he gave it back to me, and when you're opening for a national, it's quick, so you can't wait.
Right.
I played a chord, not through the amp, and I went, okay, this is going to be hard. I need to figure out where I'm at.
Right.
And I need to figure out how I'm going to be able to navigate this situation. I did it. Nobody knew. It was great. As soon as it was done, I gave him the guitar back, and I said, did you tune the other one? He said, no. I said, I want to play that one then. and he felt so bad about it.
Right.
And honestly, I didn't really care. I mean,
Right.
I was a little caught off guard by it.
Right.
But like you said, it's just a challenge.
Right.
So
yeah. Right.
and I always pick on him for it because it's something that I know he feels bad about because it was a pretty big show in front of a lot of people, and that first chord I went to play was the most god-awful sound you could imagine, and then I worked it out. I knew what I had. I knew which one sounded right, so I said, well, these are in tune, so I'll use these 2 strings to play the entire song, and that's exactly what I did.
Man, see, that's where a really good understanding of music theory and knowledge comes into play, man. Where
That's
say,
experience.
Yeah, experience and knowledge, where you can say, okay, I only got these 2 strings to work with. How am I going to make this work? And then you make it work, That's really freaking awesome. But I'll tell you what, I would have been twisted inside out had that have happened to me, and it's hard to work through sometimes, and like I said, we had our sound guy didn't show up, and so that was on all of our minds is, what's that front of house going to sound like,
Yeah.
Our light guy did a great job of handling it because, one, we had a profile from our previous show, and it helped, but we were still, all of us, all 4 of us, were up there, that going through our heads,
Yeah, and but so I don't know who your light guy is, but that's where it always helps to work with professional people.
Right.
You cannot work with unprofessional people in this atmosphere and expect anything to either go well or work or grow.
Mark Ramsberger is our light guy.
Okay.
And Dave O'Connell is our sound guy, but Dave O'Connell had taken some time off for family, and that's cool. We want people to do that.
Yeah.
And so we'd hired a backup, and the backup didn't show up. Yeah. So I was really upset about that.
That is upsetting because, at the end of the day, it's a job. Whether you're playing AC/DC and, if you're a jukebox band, it's a job. It's still work. You have to treat it like work. You cannot be unprofessional because that gets out.
Right.
And if you do have an opportunity to grow and somebody looks at the small profile that even I have, if I'm unprofessional and if I'm rude to people,
Right.
that will reflect on me one way or another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, we used to have an old saying in the military, because I served 20 years in the Air Force, and I said it was a first impression is a lasting impression.
Absolutely.
And when you first meet somebody, you want to make sure that you are professional, you treat them with dignity and respect, you know, and you make a really good first impression. And I'll tell you what, that goes a long way with people.
It's by far the most important thing that you can do.
Right.
Because recently I've had a negative first impression, and I know that there's no getting over that. In terms of with somebody else,
Right.
I was fine, but not a good impression from the other
Right.
person.
Right.
Unprofessional, not egotistical, I guess is kind of a way to put it.
Right.
And I know that it's just from inexperience.
I think that the really good and effective musicians and players are not really there to say, look at me, I'm really good. Is they're up there because, one, they love what they're doing, and two, you know, they're having a lot of fun, and they're so into it organically, you know. Even if it's not stellar or technically perfect or anything else, you know, you can always tell if somebody is just really into what they're doing, you know. Then you got the guys that want to be there but don't quite know how to be there, you know. And then you got,
Like with that first impression that I was talking about,
all right,
it's not necessarily a situation that everybody was comfortable in, but it was more so an experience showing.
right,
Because I have
An
been so
experience.
fortunate to be around bands that aren't bands, they're businesses.
Right.
Right? So if you look at how my dad approached his situation with Kicks,
Right.
it's all professional.
Oh, absolutely.
And they are a business.
Absolutely.
And seeing that is one thing,
Right.
but doing it's another.
Right.
And at the end of the day, all you have to put your ego on, and all of us have ego in some way, shape, or
We're
form.
human beings. We have egos.
But at the end of the day, all you have to put your name on is what have you done.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So what have you done?
Right.
And you can't compare
Right.
things because people have different experiences. Everybody starts at a different time, and you know, I get it.
Right.
But you can't. I just that's a really bad turnoff for me, especially in the music
I
world
think
when
for
somebody
a lot
has
of us
that.
it is. For a lot of us it is, and unfortunately, we as human beings are going to run into that with other human beings. And
Certainly.
it's just, I think it's how we handle it when we do run into it. You know, we can handle it a certain way where we're a little compassionate at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it gets too far, then we know when to cut it off and say, all right, that's enough. I can't really do anything from here on out. And then you leave it behind.
Yeah.
You know, you don't look back. Always look forward. Never look back.
There's a song in there somewhere.
Right? Don't look back. Yeah. A little bit of Boston there, huh? Sweet. So where can we find you on social media, Nick?
Nicholas Paré is what it looks like on Instagram. Last name's pronounced Paré, but Instagram and Facebook and all that, they won't accept the little accent on the E because
Right.
my family is French Canadian, as
Right.
well. So,
Here I've been saying Perry the whole time, you know.
well, it's okay. We're used to it.
Okay.
So Nicholas.Paré on Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff.
All right, we'll put a link to his social media on there, and you can check out what's going on with Nick. I'm sure he's got a lot of cool things going on.
I do.
And, any upcoming shows?
Yeah. So we're going to be doing the Blue Ridge Sportsman Association July 22nd. So I have about a month off.
July 22nd. So on July 22nd, Blue Ridge Sportsman Association up in Fairfield, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And it's going to be Everrise.
With Everrise,
Everrise. And boy, I'll tell you what, that is a dynamic band. You got Jimmy Rickard on there. You got Joe Morlock on the drums. Kyle Schuler on the front. John Wample on the bass. And of course, over next to John.
Me. John gets stuck with me.
You know what? You're next to the coolest guy in the band, man.
Absolutely.
The bass player. And I only say that because I'm biased.
You're biased. Well, I will say that I do think I would love to go through archives of every band in the United States right now, because I'm pretty sure we are the largest stage left age gap in music history.
I think so too.
I think John's 73 and I'm 21, so that's 52 years age difference on just stage left.
I think so too. And you know, but you would never know looking at John that he's that old.
Of course not.
He looks so young. And he's an incredible bass player, and every time I watch him I learn something new. You know, just watching him play. And I tell him that, and of course he's so humble, and he's like, stop it, Steph. You know, like, no, seriously. This dude is an incredible bass player. But that's a great band to be in, man. And I'll tell you, for a young guy, you know, you're nowhere to go except up, man. You know,
thank you.
That's really a great experience. So, thanks for joining me on the porch, Nick.
Absolutely.
It's been awesome talking to you today,
Thank
man.
you very much.
And make sure you check out Nick's links. And, you know, Everrise, July 22nd. And we're also going to put the Razzle Report up for this weekend's live shows. Get out and check out the live bands. Support live music. Support guys like Nick. You know, these young guys coming up. There's not very many young guys doing this rock and roll stuff these days. So
Not many. Few and far between.
that's right. So get out there, support these guys. Show them, you know, we're here to support you. We're here to get into what you're doing. All right, guys. Have a wonderful weekend, and God bless.